Hi, everyone, and welcome to NORA's Retail Up webinar series, delivering practical insights to retailers across Australia, New Zealand. I'm Lydia Bettini. I'm Head of Customer and People at Miss Abara, and I'm thrilled to be moderating today's session. In today's session, we'll unpack how Ultra Violette scaled from a local favourite to a global brand, and we'll focus on the tech-enabled strategies that powered their growth. We'll explore how they built a seamless omnichannel operation, tackled compliance, warehousing, and finance challenges across markets, and the strategic partnerships that help them build a scalable and a future-ready tech stack. We're together for the next hour, and we will have around 10 minutes at the end for audience questions. So please feel free to drop your questions as we go, or you can hold them until the end and I'll prompt you again. Joining me today are two fantastic panelists that I'm very excited to introduce you to. We have Jane Furphy. Jane is the head of operations at Ultra Violette, who has been instrumental in driving the brand's global expansion. And we also have Matthew Owens, director at Annexa, the tech partner behind their ERP transformation and platform integration. Let's dive in. Jane, I'd love to start with you. If you can provide us with an overview of the Ultra Violette brand, the size and range of the products that you have, current channels that you're trading in, and I think just to help us set the scene for the expansion that kind of has come through.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, so Ultra Violette. We're a six and a bit year old brand. It was founded in 2019 by Ava Matthews and Beck Jefford. They are beauty industry insiders, have been in the industry for a long time, and they really saw a gap in the market for a range of what we call skin screens. And skin screens are combining your daily SPF with a great skincare product that's great. It feels great on your skin and does great as well. There's 12 products, approximately 12 products in the range at the moment, with products that are going to hit every single person in the texture that you want to kind of keep you covered daily. We started out in e-commerce in 2019 with just a few products in the range at that time, then expanded into retail in Australia, and that was followed very quickly by an expansion into the UK as well. Over those 5 years, probably over the first 3 to 4 years, really, we also brought on a number of markets and some key retail partners in Sephora across many different regions as well. We hit Southeast Asia, we went into the Middle East, and very recently we've launched into North America. So we've launched into Canada in 2024, and in the last 2 months launched into the US, which has been a big, big activity.
Yeah, that's huge. How exciting. And in terms of your global growth, as you're kind of embarking and moving through that journey, what was the tipping point, Jane, when Ultra Violette realized that perhaps the original tech stack couldn't support your growth rate anymore?
Yeah, absolutely. So we started off with a Shopify site and an instance of Xero for accounting, and then after a little while brought on Dia or Sin 7. I'll probably interchange those two words a few times as it changed names over the time we were there. We brought on new markets. We brought on the UK and Europe. We needed to have 2 instances of those, of Xero and of Dia. We couldn't operate both of those markets in one set of that system. We really had limited integrations with our warehouses, which as we expanded became more difficult to get inventory visibility and required more people power to be raising sales orders in multiple systems. But very importantly, in 2023, we did a capital raise and found a lot of reporting deficiencies through that process as well, bringing all of the information from all of the systems that we had together for the information that prospective investors needed was a lot of work and really showed that something needed to change. But also in 2023, we were firming up our North American ambitions as well. And we knew that we were going to enter Canada and the US, which was something we'd always thought would be a one day, maybe in a few years, opportunity started to become a bit more real. And we knew that going into the US this year in 2025, we needed to have our ducks in a row with system before we did that entry. We really knew that it was going to be a big focus of the team to actually get on the shelves in the US and get all of our operations working well. The sales and warehousing and logistics operations needed to be smooth and our full focus. So we wanted to have our systems ready to go before we started on that journey.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense, particularly when, embarking on such a big market, with lots of complexities. I think that feels like the perfect time. Um, Matthew, what are some common mistakes that you see scaling retailers make when they're, at the juncture that Ultraviolet was at and they're kind of approaching that international expansion? What are some mistakes that people can make from that systems perspective?
That's a good question. I think we see all different shapes and sizes in terms of how people approach the system strategy to sort of keep up with the growth of a business when going global. I'd say pretty similar to how Jane just described it. Probably the most common is that people patch together systems. So they just kind of patch things together rather than sort of planning the systems for scale. So it is nice when we're able to understand if the growth is going to go faster and at a bigger scale, that we can kind of get the system strategy in place and make that a bit easier. So I'd say bolt-ons and sort of manual workarounds, puts a lot of strain on businesses trying to go global. They probably underestimate the amount of complexity in some of those duplication of data efforts and trying to cobble together reports and satisfy all the relationships in a business and get information to people quickly. I'd say a lot of global retailers underestimate integration needs. Not just the simple kind of selling stuff on Shopify and tracking orders, but integrations across 3PLs, different currencies, EDI, different trading partners. There's a lot to it and it can take a lot of time. And if there are many systems that a business is trying to integrate to make those things happen, it's really difficult. So we see a lot of pain in trying to cobble together many integrations across different systems. And then probably the third one is the poor finance teams get neglected. So finance and compliance, that really doesn't matter. We want to sell stuff first, and then we will then figure out how to satisfy, tax and audit, statutory reporting, and it just kind of, again, cobbling together all that information afterwards is quite difficult in order to kind of satisfy basic compliance stuff. So I'd say they're sort of the three, I wouldn't say, I guess, mistakes, but probably just challenges in terms of what we see when we're having discussions with retailers trying to go global.
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense, particularly when a global opportunity presents itself. Probably the last thing on the retailer's mind is tax and compliance and how that's all going to work.
Yep.
So
Before accountants, the accountants just have to deal with it afterwards. And then when the importance of being, efficient and profitable and having your inventory costing dialed in and intercompany trading between different regions, it's really complicated. And so trying to pull that together afterwards, it's brutal. So it's nice to be able to clean that up and have everything organized and then, go and accelerate the growth strategy.
And I would imagine helps with agility too, once you have those strong foundations in place so that you can make those quicker, more agile decisions.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think UV is a great example of that when sales channels change, when you want to make quick changes to your supply chain, whether that be different warehousing or changes in your production or product development strategies, you need to be able to plug and play different integrations to manage your supply chain. So to Jane's point, getting organized and having some platforms that can do that. Obviously in hindsight's always good, but I think getting ahead of that, if there is a strong growth strategy makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely. And Jane, as you expanded, how did the Ultraviolet business prioritize between, that D2C channel that you started with and then, moving into wholesale as it entered new global markets?
A great question. Look, D2C is really important to the business. We've seen that the direct line into the customers helps us massively with our product development, with understanding what customers love, what they don't love, and understanding what messaging gets across with them quickly as well through the D2C channel. That said, we've got D2C channels in most of our big markets, but we haven't put them into all of our markets. Where it's more complex, so areas like Southeast Asia, where you've got multiple countries and not as high volumes being serviced out of the one country. Europe is similar. We've decided to not have our own D2C channel there and work with our retailers in those areas to get the product into the customer's hands. Wholesale as well. I mean, wholesale is a huge part of our business, and partnering with the right retail partners in each region has been really important. And they're managing D2C and our growth in D2C with how we want to grow with the retail partners has been something that's been a real focus of the business over the years and is region specific for us. We'll have different strategies in different regions to balance those priorities. And I mean, partnering with Sephora has been a really big one for us. And we've seen in some markets, it just really makes sense to work exclusively with them and even focus a lot of the D2C channel from our business into theirs to make sure that we're growing really strongly with the retail partner there.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And I think I'm sure very helpful for lots of retailers on the call who are contemplating international expansion and, perhaps, trying to understand how they could tailor their offering region by region. I think that's such a key call out, is that not every region is going to want the exact same thing or same way of presenting your product and your brand. For a retailer that's just starting to expand internationally, what is one investment that you would recommend that they make to avoid kind of costly course corrections or changes down the track?
I think one of and this had already happened by the time I came into Ultraviolet, but really one of the investments that Beck and Ava did here was probably investing in the leadership team. I think that new global markets had some experience there and were able to already knew a bit about the regions that perhaps were already in. They got a really great person over in Europe and the UK who had been in the region for a little while, was Australian, so knew the brand and knew how to sell an Australian brand, but also did know about the region. And then the leadership team here in Australia, I think, usually came from brands that had some global expansion under their belts and could drive the right decision-making in those regions there. I would say it's also important to not grow too quickly as well, not just jumping onto every market that's thrown to you, really looking at it strategically, because sometimes it can, if you don't have the resources to support all of the regions that you're given, that can, you can just not see the growth that you'd like to in all of the regions that you're in.
Yeah, absolutely. I can see that can seem really appealing on the outside, perhaps when a new region opportunity presents itself. But yeah, you're so right. It's about that kind of due diligence and, how you actually kind of understand that market and what is the size of the opportunity. And perhaps it's not a never, maybe it's just a not right now.
Not right now. Yes, absolutely. Saying no sometimes can be a really good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I can see that. Matt, did you have anything to add there?
Great point from Jane. I think, yeah, pick people 100%. Get great people that, can help take you on that journey and have experience kind of doing it before. And that was Jane. That was you as well. Knowing Jane from prior businesses. Jane coming in to help UV with this, with the depth of experience in supply chain operations, production, and doing that global, I think was a game changer for UV to accelerate and do this really quickly and smoothly. So definitely agree in the people investment off the bat. I think probably the other thing would be just to, from a tech perspective, in terms of what we see, light touch, I would consider, particularly in the supply chain space, just getting organized with inventory and costing and trying to manage that in one spot and not many spots, aside from all the finance and compliance stuff that's, from my perspective, equally important, but clearly to sell things and be profitable and make sure the business is performing, getting inventory organized seems to be a real challenge for many of the smaller retailers that are about to go global. I'd say UV were definitely ahead of that. They were already very well organized, but still had the challenges with the technical kind of complexity. So I'd say consider a light touch investment into, an inventory system or some supply chain systems that can manage that globally, and then maybe sort of not be too limited by having to replace everything in one go from a systems perspective. We often see that as a real challenge where a business comes to us and they've got to replace everything in their tech stack because it's all kind of cobbled together, and you pull one piece out and the rest of it sort of all breaks. So it's a difficult one, but yeah, I would definitely consider a light touch approach, getting inventory organized. I think that'd be a good way to avoid having major course corrections.
I just add to that as well. I think while there were some challenges with the systems that we did have, I think that it was nailed. Even before I came in at Ultra Violette as well, the getting in Xero, it's a simple accounting system, but it did the job for the time that we needed it. And the same with Sin7. Obviously, we got to a point where we did need to have one global system, but they were easy things to bring on. They didn't have lengthy implementation periods. So just being able to put on the right size system at the right cost without complicating things early is very important.
Yeah, and I think that that's a great call out, Jane, in terms of, where your business is on the maturity curve, and perhaps, solutions that fit your business at a certain period in time just no longer do, which is, such a clear trajectory and exciting trajectory of the ultraviolet journey. I think, Matt, a lot of retailers in the room, I'm sure, would be really keen to understand, you've spoken a lot about, unification and some of the benefits that would have for retailers. But I'd love to kind of help us get kind of into the engine and actually understand, if you could break down for us how Ultraviolet's ERP and integration overhaul helped actually unify those operations. If there's a way that you can break down the current solution for us to understand, what that looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess at its core is bringing together a finance and inventory system that can run, and obviously, Jane, please do contribute with some of the specifics as needed, multiple companies. So UV have businesses in not just Australia, but the UK, the US, Canada, and more, with Southeast Asia coming online as well. So multiple economic entities, consolidating the financials across those businesses, supply chain, so inventory management, production, costing across each of those entities. So creating, one system that has a global view of inventory and centralizing inventory to enable intercompany accounting across the UV businesses and then into each market. Standardizing order management so that there's a consistent way that orders and inventory are going in and out of the business across all of the different markets. That then enables the business to have sort of consistent reporting across each market, speaking the same language, the same view of financials, the same view of costing, the same view of the status of inventory going in and out of UV and at the 3PL versus at their own warehouses, etc. Integrations. So many integrations across the different markets, whether that be 3PL, EDI, D2C, etc. with Shopify, effectively creating a spot where we can house all of the integrations technically in one spot. So we have sort of one system that has all the plumbing across the core ERP system with financials and inventory, but many Shopify sites, many 3PLs, many trading partners, and have all the plumbing go to one spot to enable UV and our business to be able to support UV, you know, a simple, consistent way of managing integrations. There's probably more in terms of the integrations. I know, Jan, you'd have a bunch of things there. And then probably the other thing to add would be, you know, production. So a big part of UV's business is being able to manage production, the formulations of the UV products, working with suppliers, and that sort of feeds into the ERP. So that probably breaks it down in terms of what we've done. What that means from a tech stack perspective is effectively an ERP system that does finance and inventory, and then an integration platform to enable all the plumbing to flow through. And then it's basically two consistent blocks that we can plug and play different integrations when we need, enter new markets when we need, because we can add on a new market into the ERP and then add on additional integrations and just do things faster. And I'd say that's probably equal for UV to have the flexibility in existing markets to grow faster and enhance the supply chain, you know, as well as enter new markets, which, yeah, clearly the business is still growing and doing a lot of. I hope that, yeah, makes sense.
I think one thing we haven't called out there is that ERP system that we're using is NetSuite, which is, and the middleware that we've got that allows us to link to all of these different warehouses and Shopify systems is Soligo. And we have so many other systems being able to link into all of these into NetSuite, and all of a sudden can see everything. We're logging into one system now and can see everything in there for all of the different regions. We can report in with all the different regions. We can segment it how we want to. Yeah, it's brilliant.
That's a really important point, Jane, isn't it? You know, the actual systems that we're doing. So yeah, that's obviously where Annexa comes in as NetSuite experts and integration partners. So they're kind of the core platforms that we use, but just an awesome fit for UV. And yeah, reflecting on all that stuff, Jane, in terms of all the different functions that have been implemented, not just to date, but also the stuff that is in play and where the business is going. Yeah, very exciting, and obviously super proud of all the work that you guys have been able to do to make this work and do it quickly. I think that's something, sitting back, I know you and I chatting about it, Jane, is pretty yeah, really awesome to see how quickly this has been able to come into play. I think it was around 6 months to do 4 markets, which is terrifyingly fast, but a great example of when you're organized and there's good foundations and you've got the great people investment there to be able to get this stuff done quickly and efficiently, and it not probably be as daunting as what you know, many businesses I think would perceive ERP and system integration projects to be.
Yeah, and I wanted to touch on that. We had a chat before, and the 6 months for me really stood out as quite a quick execution timeline. And I think that, you know, we've spoken about multiple entities, and for many retailers who are contemplating that international expansion, I'm sure that can seem quite daunting in terms of, you know, how do we set up our business to trade in other regions, but then also how do we manage that from a back end perspective, and you know, all of those kind of intercompany challenges that you may have as you move into different entities and multiple entities trading in multiple currencies. So many considerations. In terms of, Jane, for you and your team, I guess I'd love to understand, you know, what were the biggest cultural or workflow shifts that you needed to make internally as you're moving towards this omnichannel model and, you know, partnering with Annexa? You know, what did that actually look like behind the scenes with the UV team?
But I think maybe we did have a really closely connected finance and operational team here at Ultra Violette. But we also, I guess, we're going for the same goal often, but in different ways, with an operations team and a finance team. And you know, one of the key things that we did at Ultra Violette is we had a fantastic finance manager, 2IC to the CFO here, and we thought she would be great to lead the project that we were running, to bring NetSuite into the business. But we actually moved her from the finance team into my team, so that we could make sure that she was a fully rounded finance and operational person, who could help guide the team and understand both sides of that coin, to be able to translate really easily between finance and operations. And I think one of the things that we did find is that in the small instances where we would sometimes kind of have friction between the two teams and be trying to balance detail with getting things done, and any errors that potentially my team were making that would impact the finance team downstream, we had somebody as a translator, who sat amongst my team, but really was able to educate us in the finance side, and also pass that back to the finance team as well. And we've really joined the teams together and become really strong in that regard. I think also our e-commerce team were a big part of bringing in NetSuite and changing all of these systems here, which I think the rest of the business hadn't realised how big a part they would play in this project. But making sure that we all understood what we were doing together was probably the biggest piece that we had to do to make sure it would work.
I think that's such a great call out. That cross-functional collaboration is so key for transformation projects, ERP and otherwise. And I think you're right, teams can have, the same kind of end goal and be working towards the same thing, but the way that they approach it and their thought process around what they need to actually get there can be quite different once you start to break it down. I really love that idea of actually, moving someone from finance into the operations team so that they are, more well-rounded and, almost that knowledge transfer happens before that kind of tendering process even took place. And I think rewinding a little bit, I would love to understand, and I'm sure there are other retailers too, how Ultra Violette actually went about choosing Annexa and choosing NetSuite. I'm sure many of us are going out for new software providers all the time, whether it's for a new need that your business has or to replacing an existing provider that you may have grown out of. So I'd love to hear from you, Jane, around that selection process for Ultra Violette.
Yeah, fantastic. So we had some consultants that helped us. They'd been with the business from day dot. Lloyd and Claire, they knew Beck and Ava from previous businesses and had helped build the systems that we did have, any integrations, and really helping us choose when to bring on systems and help us find the right fit initially. We gave the project to them. We knew that they knew enough of our business, what we were using, and could translate what we needed into, I guess, something that a potential ERP partner could pick up and had the level of detail that we wanted to be in there. And they were absolutely fantastic support, and let us kind of, once we'd made the decision, they could hand over the reins to us to actually implement. Shortly, I think we had a long list. It wasn't too long initially, of maybe 5 different vendors. That very quickly became a short list. I think it was very easy to realize that there were only a few systems out there that could cover the global nature that we needed, and the flexible nature that we needed as well, with some of the intricacies of our business. And I mean, it was interesting once we'd narrowed it down to 2, because there was another partner that we thought for a little while that might be the right one for us. It was a bit newer, it was a bit more of a gamble, but what it came down to in the end was the partnership with Annexa, really. And they had the people in Australia. The other group that we were looking at were US based. They didn't have a team here in Australia that we could connect in with. And we are heavily in the detail and like to lean on our partners for support so that we can change quickly, and we can learn quickly when we're bringing something new on. And Annexa just showed that they were the right partner for that NetSuite was the right system. I've used NetSuite a number of times. I knew that it could do the job for our business, absolutely. And then working with Annexa as the partner for that. They had the team, they had people just down the road. We're also working with some of the team in Brisbane now, and building relationships with them has been fantastic. And we've been able to get to the level of detail that we needed to really nail the implementation.
Yeah, that's so great. And I agree. I think, being able to have accessible partners when it comes to these big projects is such an important part of that consideration set. We have had the same consideration set with Samara, and sometimes we have chosen partners that have been in a different time zone, and particularly in the States can be quite challenging because it's so very much opposite to our time zone here, and they can be great partners, but often that communication challenge and not being able to pick up the phone or send a quick message and have that quick fire response, particularly when you want to move quickly, or as you say, Jane, you really want to get into that detail. That's often hard between emails that take 12 hours either way, and can really slow down a process when you need to perhaps clarify some really key points. So I love that call out.
And I might just make one other call out there, is that we also knew that with the broad spectrum, I mean, NetSuite can do a lot of things. It's a very adaptable ERP system, and it can be set up for so many different types of businesses. But we knew that Annexa had done businesses very similar to ours before, as well as many others. So they've got a really flexible range, but we knew that they knew how to co-manufacture products and ship it out from Australia globally, and how to set up those entities. So that was a really big piece for us in making sure that we could choose NetSuite, but also then get NetSuite right, because you can get it wrong.
Matt, from your perspective, what do you think made the partnership work so well between Annexa and Ultra Violette?
I think the thing that stood out for me, initially chatting with Beck, one of the co-founders of Ultra Violette, was just how laser focused the synopsis of where the business was going and what the things were that needed to be nailed from a systems perspective. And no doubt the consultants, Jane, that you mentioned, definitely helped get everyone aligned in terms of what the tricky things were, and what the business had to nail, and where the business was going, and which markets were going to grow, and where the investment was going to go, and what the plan was. So from my perspective, laser focus on what the business was trying to achieve, where the business was going, and what the requirements are. What the things that are tricky and have to be nailed versus the 101 stuff that they assume, shouldn't be a problem. It was very clear that between, Beck, Jane, the CFO, Emma, they're all on the same page. So everyone was really clear with what those goals were. It didn't really matter who we were chatting with. It was consistent, leadership across the business, everyone on the journey, obviously super smart in the detail. I know Jane mentioned that point, but really, really specific things, which makes our lives easier to understand what's important for the business and how we're going to be successful. So from the get-go, really clear, really aligned, and full commitment to the business. And I think that is a great start to an awesome partnership, that we can get on the same page and be, in line. The project was very ambitious, so I think there was some really good, open and robust conversations around where we saw the banana skins and where UV understood what those risks, were to the business and what would happen. There were also a number of sort of business decisions that were in play, and some markets may be accelerated quicker than other markets. So I think that was nice to be really open with us around, the pivoting that may occur, and what might happen in terms of which markets are going to go quicker, and what do we need to do from a project perspective if that changes. So I think, that part just meant we were really honest, open with where we were going. Everyone was on the same page to get it done. Jane and I had worked in the past before. So Jane coming into the business about that time gave me a lot of confidence that Jane had sort of been there before, done this before, and that, you know, Beck and her team had, you know, a really strong, good operator that has done this before, entering into new markets, which gave us a lot of confidence. I think, yeah, from there, it's cultural fit, it's great people, and it was really clear from day one that there were good vibes. We could get in a room and talk about something and have very open conversations, and it just felt like, yeah, I guess the depth of conversations and our team fit was great for one another. Not discounting, you know, everyone's depth of experience and proven ability to have done this before, which no doubt was very important for both of us to be able to go into this and be confident that we were going to nail it.
Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. Jane, did you have something you wanted to add?
No, I think really that we got into the detail early, and we really, while we were still in that decision-making phase, we went back on the things that we weren't sure about. And in the business development team, we really pushed the team to make sure that we were choosing the right things. And I think that was it set the scene for us to get it. We knew that we were going for the right system, but we also knew, as Matt was saying, what those banana skins were. We knew what the challenges were going to be, and we left enough time to focus on those, which is good.
Yeah, I think that's so crucial to allow yourself that time to get it right. It's so easy to rush through a project and then perhaps post-implementation think, oh, this would have been great, or how do we retrofit this, or, you know, this customer need or internal requirement that was left out. So I love that attention to detail through the process. I think that's what makes for a successful, you know, rollout and integration. I think perhaps for brands that don't yet have that, you know, bench strength or depth in their IT or dev team or operations team, and perhaps haven't done, you know, an ERP, you know, re-platform before, for example, and maybe don't have that depth of experience around, you know, understanding requirements or even understanding future requirements. If a brand is still kind of on that growth journey, looking forward. Perhaps this is one for you, Matt. Like, I'm keen to kind of try and understand what a brand should expect from a good partner during that system transformation.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that, you know, a lot of fast growth retail businesses, you know, they're not software developers. They don't have IT teams, but they do have some savvy people that understand e-commerce, understand how to sell things, and, you know, bridging the gap between, you know, selling things and doing e-commerce versus supply chain operations of finance, and technical people that can understand the end-to-end business processes can be really challenging. So I think that in terms of getting organized in the business side is pretty much what Jane did. They grabbed someone, they seconded them from finance, and they said, you're the person that's going to be in between finance, supply chain, and sales, and have someone. They don't need to be a developer. They don't need to be a systems technical person. They need to understand the business processes between the different teams and understand the end-to-end flow of how transactions and goods and services are going in and out of the businesses. And then they can be the conduit to maximize what they get from partners and great partners to go and get things done. So from my perspective, I think on the business side, you need someone that understands the business processes, that can coordinate the people internally and help make decisions. And then, you know, that'll pay you back in spades, being able to then be the, you know, I guess, first point of contact with external technology partners and get things done. Yeah.
I think also making sure that you understand, especially if it's a system or something for the future that you're not really sure about, and if you don't have that systems knowledge in your business, making sure that you are working with a partner who can explain things to you at your level. If you're not really understanding it well enough, what they're proposing to you to have as your system, and how it's going to work, then either it's not the right system for you, or it's not the right partner for you. I think if you're able to take back what they're saying to you and be able to explain it and understand it, then you've made the right decision. And there's definitely I have done a few of these system implementations before, but I haven't I hadn't done a lot of the warehouse integration level to this detail before, and I hadn't used the Soligo middleware that we brought on board, but the team at Annexa were able to kind of dumb that down to a level where I've also now got my operators, like the supply chain coordinators, are in there managing errors and understanding where the messages are going wrong between the warehouse and our NetSuite system. They don't have any IT background at all, but they're able to get in because we've had it explained to us in such a in a way that we can absorb it and digest it and go use it well.
Yeah, and I think that that's so key. Like to break down, for brands that you don't have to be the expert in everything, and you don't need to know everything as you're embarking on these projects. And, Jane, you touched on, leading on consultants as well, who perhaps have that more well-rounded view of not only your business operations, but your strategy and your brand, and who can, give you advice on potential solutions and what you may need now and in the future. And I think that that's so important, for brands too, that, yeah, you don't have to, you may know everything about your brand, but in terms of, the scaffolding and the foundations and the systems around it to build your brand and make it a success, there are those experts out there in industry who, are so happy to share their opinion and guide you in the right direction.
Yeah, money worth spending, I think, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Matt, did you have anything to add there?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think when a retailer, if you're considering this and you're going out to market and you need to pick technology and you need to pick partners or system integrators to work with, provided you've got those internal things in place and everyone's clear on the growth strategy side of it and what's important, pick partners that have done it before, pick partners that have depth of experience, can show you, well, this is what we did with this business, here's what we learned, here's what we think we can take from those learnings and help you make sure we nail this. So definitely depth of experience, global experience is really important. I think that the integration capability, 100% need to look at that. Jane made the point about, you could talk to that the people would implement or invest in systems and get it wrong. And you need the right partners that you can work with to get it right. And I think that Jane is such a great point. We see it very often where people have a crack at it and just don't have some of those things we've spoken about in place, and it's challenging. So my advice would be talk to SIs. Software companies they make software, they make great software, they give us the tools, but talk to SIs that need to hold hands with you and get it right and explain things at the right level and have the ability to execute. Definitely speak to an SI, and I'll do that up front because, for us, we're focusing equal efforts on things outside of the ERP. We spend most of our time, understanding end-to-end business processes, building integrations. The inside the ERP part of the technical work is only a section of it. Yes, it's important, but it's all the other things around the edges that I think lead to a very successful implementation. So integration capabilities, I wouldn't underestimate the complexity there. Customizations, I'd probably call that one out. You need to do it. That's the value that you get in the systems, is the ability to personalize things and actually do things unique for your business. And I think people are so conservative with bigger systems. They kind of go, customizations and integrations feel tricky, so let's not do that. Let's go really simple. And then they don't get value. That the ERP system is just not doing what it's supposed to do because it's not smart enough and doesn't have the right level of integration into the other systems. So I think that UV did a great job to get that balance right and actually bite off building integrations and doing it properly and doing it once and getting it right. To ensure that the investment and into systems, they got value from it straight away. And then probably the last thing for me, sorry, you
I was just going to add to that point specifically, Matt, because I think the balance between using the system purely as it's built and then customizing, it's a real balance. You've got to pick it. And how you retrofit sometimes processes into your business, and you have to have a really good look at how you're doing things. You haven't necessarily set them up in the most efficient way. Sometimes then matching what the system's doing is the right thing to do, but then knowing where it's worthwhile to customize, and really challenge yourself on, don't just customize because you're doing something you want it to work the way you've been doing it. Have a think about whether the way the new system is doing it is right, is okay, and then add on that. And I think oftentimes we'd have people in the team saying, oh, I don't really like how this works. I want to change it. That will result in a customization. And we'd challenge them to go back, have a think about, like, let it sit for a little while. And then if it's really something that will add value to change the system, then yes, we will go and do it. And we'll only make that investment where it's really worthwhile.
Agreed. I think that's a good example, Jane, of that detail prior to commencing the project, where obviously there were more things that come up when we get into actually executing, but there were some really good conversations around more, leveraging out of the box versus where do you personalize. And I think we were very detail oriented to get that right between us and understand the things that we had to personalize and why that was important, and not build things for the sake of it, right? Try not to customize, obviously, wherever possible, but not be afraid. Don't be afraid to actually just go build it, because we've got trust in the tech, trust in the people, and get it done. And then the outcome is just great value from the system, and we actually get things done on time. So I think, I feel like it's kind of gone back the other way, where people are so risk averse to technology because they've had horror stories, and then they kind of go with the bare bones, and then they just don't get any value from the system. And it's like, it makes it harder for adoption of people if it's not sort of performing and automating and doing all the good stuff that it says on the tin. Anyway, I hope that insight is helpful.
No, I agree, Matt. I think, and you touched on it, Jane, too. I think challenging those customization conversations is really key, but also not doing a customization potentially at the expense of, slow processes, moving back to manual after you've invested all of this time in automation, and then the potential commercial implications of that too when something's not working the way that it should. I think you've really got to balance, that ROI of the customization and say, okay, well, if this is going to deliver us what we need quickly so that we can build that commercial relationship, or, save X amount of time with these processes, then it's absolutely worth it. And I agree, retailers shouldn't be afraid to do that, because it can, just supercharge and help you pull your team's focus into something that's worthwhile. That's something we work on a lot at Miss Amara too, is, why have our teams, doing these, basic manual processes that can be automated? They're so talented, so driven, they love the brand. Let's focus their time and their energy in a place that's actually going to add value, and not have them kind of on the tools day in, day out, executing these manual processes. I'm conscious of time, and we've got quite a few questions, so I would love to move into Q&A. I have a great question for you, Jane, to start off with. So the question is, does Ultra Violette transact through EDI with trading partners? And if so, how did you manage ERP cutover successfully?
Yes. Okay. This one has been a learning journey for me at Ultra Violette as well. It had always been in past roles, not exactly within my remit, or had already been set up, so I didn't have to deep dive as much as I have over the last probably 18 months at UV. We're set up with EDI with a few of our retailers. We were just operating, I guess, in a manual EDI format, basically. We were logging in, doing everything in our EDI partners portal, and then sending through SSC labels to our warehouses for orders. We don't work with too many partners, really, too many retailers where they are asking for EDI. But since we've entered into the US, we thought this is actually a big enough market where we're going to fully integrate our EDI order system, and that's something that we have just launched with the Annexa team over the last couple of months. And it's been an interesting process. We did make sure that we didn't want to overcomplicate the implementation and add EDI integrations through the ERP process. We thought we are running in a way that is working for now, so we'll leave that we'll leave the core implementation to be just the ERP system and the warehouse integrations, and we'll keep running manually for now. And then we bit off that piece once we'd settled the system. And I think that actually really worked well for us. That won't work for everybody because you need it you're already in an integrated EDI system. And so you'll have to think clearly about that when you go into it. But for us, that worked well. And we were able to spend the time in learning and getting it right, seeing it was our first EDI integration going into the US. And I think that was absolutely the right thing to do for us. And we've nailed it without maybe some, I'd say some minor annoyances for our warehouse and for our team at Ultra Violette. But from the retailer perspective, we've been able to do it seamlessly, which is super, super important.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that, Jane. I think, yes, often you can be, like a duck on the water. I think as long as your retailers just see the top of the water, that's the main thing. So that's so fantastic to hear. Thank you for that. And great question too. Thank you. The second half of the question is for you, Matt, which is what capabilities does NetSuite's EDI functionality have, e.g. dashboards, carrier/order fulfillment?
Well, I guess all of those things. So yeah, effectively integrating into NetSuite, we leverage all of those things. So our fulfillment records, our order management records, image records. So we can integrate down to the lowest sort of level. In terms of technologies, we can plug straight into NetSuite's API, or in the case of Ultra Violette, we use middleware. So we're using an integration platform to sort of centralize all the integrations and then have sort of one set of plumbing from the middleware back to NetSuite. And in the case of UV, correct me if I'm wrong, Jane, but we are using an EDI partner that already has a relationship with your trading partner. So that technology basically has the mapping on the trading partner's side, and then we have direct integrations into NetSuite that then leverage our iPaaS back into warehouse systems and 3PL. So it's sort of like there's sort of two layers to the integration: trading partner into ERP, and then ERP through integrations to warehouses.
Yep. And we also, the EDI partner that we've got also did have NetSuite plugins, I think, which helped that process as well. A lot of the fields that are needed, they had, you could just turn that on once they'd got in and added their plugin into our NetSuite instance.
Yeah, it's a great shout out. We work with many retailers that have a number of EDI connections, and so in the case of an EDI provider that already has an existing relationship with a trading partner, fantastic. There's already knowledge of the trading partner's systems. It makes our lives much easier, but we also have to navigate building new EDI connections directly through integration. So we can do both, but it is nice to have that confidence that an EDI partner has already done it before and they understand the trading partner systems, which in UV's case was fortunate that we could use that, but still mapping it back through ERP and then back through integrations for warehousing and fulfillment. It's still quite an end-to-end that needs to be considered to make sure the steps are nailed.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. Just to add on to that question, what if there is no pre-existing integration, for example, with the partner? Is that something that can be custom built by the Annexa team?
Yeah, absolutely. We build new EDI connections every day. We have some customers that are entering that many markets and mandate EDI because they're big enough to warrant EDI in all the markets. So again, using an iPaaS type platform where we can centralize integrations, we are reliant on having great people from the trading partner. So we need to have the appropriate technical resources. They need documentation, we need mapping, and ultimately you need a couple of humans that can work together. And provided we can have that conversation and the trading partner's got some technical people we can rely on, then we can figure the mapping out, and then we can follow the EDI flow back through ERP and any other integrations that our customers have.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, thanks, Matt. I have another question for you, Jane. Congratulations on the implementation and market expansion. What were one or two of the biggest risks? What were the banana skins you saw entering a new market with new systems, and how did you mitigate those?
Okay, I think one of the biggest risks is the integration with our warehouses and getting that right. If you turn on a system and you can't send a sales order to the warehouse and get them to fulfill it, that's kind of where everything can go absolutely wrong. And I'd say probably half of the work that we did in the design and the development was on our integration. That's where a huge amount of the effort went. And we had four, was it four? Four warehouses that we went live with at the same time. It was definitely, the Annexa team definitely didn't advise us to do that initially, but we thought we can go at that. We actually did decide we went live in November, which was also when Black Friday, Cyber Monday is held. The warehouses weren't too impressed with that decision to try and do all of that in 1 month. But we put in the time and the effort, and we made sure that we had weekly calls with the warehouses, with Annexa and with the Ultra Violette team, to make sure that we were getting to the level of detail that we needed. But we also did have backup plans as well. So we knew we had been working manually with those warehouses before going live. We'd had quite limited integrations, but I guess we set ourselves up that we knew we could still take the information and run manually if we needed to. We also, while it was in November, which is the big sale month for everybody, we have our major sale activity a couple of months before that. So we knew our sales volume wasn't going to be impacted. But also, we're a bit of a seasonal product, and for 3 of the 4 warehouses that we were integrating, it was in their quiet period. It was in winter for those regions, and that gave us a level of comfort as well, that if something went wrong, we focused on Australia because we knew that was the most important. It was the biggest volume driver for the business, but also it was in summer, so it was peak period. We couldn't get that wrong. If one of those other warehouses did happen to not work at the time, we knew it would be low volume and we could work manually at the same time.
Yeah, I think that's a great call out. Thank you. And just in terms of strategically trying to find that right time, which as you expand into international markets becomes more and more challenging.
Absolutely.
But I think, yeah, from a risk mitigation perspective, that makes a lot of sense. So thank you, Jane. That actually brings us to the end of our session today. So thank you everyone for your great Q&A, and thank you for joining us at our NORA's Retail Up session. Jane and Matthew, you've shared such valuable insights into Ultra Violette's growth journey and the tech that's powered your global expansion. So thank you. And for everyone watching, we all hope that you're leaving with some fresh ideas and some practical takeaways as well for your own retail journey. On behalf of NORA, I'd like to thank you all again, and we look forward to seeing you at our next session. Thank you. Take care.
Thanks, Lydia. Thanks, Jane.
Thanks, Kat.
Thanks, everyone.